in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for attending the webinar. The Food and Drug Administration has published several regulations to improve the safety of human and animal food. Sorry, just hold on a second. I'm sorry. Sorry for the interruption because I thought the audio was not good. So the most important regulation for food importers in the country is the Foreign Supplier Verification Program Regulation, otherwise called FSVP rule. This was published on November 27, 2015. This regulation or the rule contains a new set of requirements for importers. It's quite possible that some people have not previously considered themselves to be food importers per se, nor directly subject to FDA food safety requirements may now fall under the new FSVP regulation, or rather FSVP definition of a food importer. This webinar is going to provide some basic information about the new regulation. So obviously, this is not, the webinar is not meant to provide all the details pertaining to the regulation, but it will definitely provide some basic information about the new regulation. Well, my name is Rama and I'm the Technical Director for Perry Johnson Food Safety Registrar. And as you all know, we certify food companies to various GFSI food safety standards. And we also help food processing companies in the implementation of the 7 FSMA rules by providing training and also by doing gap analysis against the various FSMA rules. For your information, we do conduct a 2-day FSVP implementation training in our corporate office in Troy, Michigan, free of cost. I repeat, it's free of cost. Similarly, we conduct the preventive controls for human and animal food, otherwise known as PCQI training, again free of cost, all in Troy, Michigan. So if you want to know more about the dates and the details of the training courses, please visit our website. The main objective of the webinar is to provide a bird's eye view of the new regulation and to make you aware of the details of the FSVP regulation. Let me say something about the Food and Drug Cosmetic Act of 1938. That act, long ago in 1938, placed primary responsibility for food safety on the food industry. So the entity that produces a hazardous food by definition is a food containing any biological, chemical, or physical agent that is reasonably likely to cause illness or injury, can be held accountable. Okay, that was as per the FD&C Act of 1938. Also, anyone who introduces or receives an unsafe food in interstate commerce, including importing of food into the country, may also be held accountable. The Act actually gives a responsibility for regulating food safety. This is going to exclude meat, poultry, and processed egg products because these are regulated by another agency. FDA, in fact, partners with USDA and the 50 states to oversee the food safety aspects in the entire country. Now, the responsibility of manufacturers towards food safety or safety of the products they manufacture cannot be overemphasized. Okay? And the manufacturer's responsibility includes providing food that is safe and suitable for consumption of their consumers, or basically to consumers. And also maintain confidence in internationally traded food and ensure consumers have clear and easily understood product information. I'm referring to labeling actually. So basically, three different things. Basically, manufacturers have to make sure that the product they manufacture is safe and suitable for consumption, maintain some confidence in internationally traded food, and three, make sure the labeling information or label is accurate. Okay. As a matter of fact, consumers also have specific responsibilities towards food safety, and they are expected to follow the relevant instructions provided on labels and also apply appropriate food hygiene measures. Traditional FDA food authorities, I'm referring to the responsibilities of FDA prior to FSMA, that included establishing regulations and guidance to ensure that food is safe to eat, also inspecting the food industry and the food itself sometimes, to ensure compliance with safety standards. And obviously taking regulatory action to protect consumers from hazardous food. And you all know FDA has the authority to remove unsafe food from the marketplace and also to refuse entry into the country. I mean, if a food was found unsafe, they have the right to prevent entry of that food from coming in. The FDA has always performed inspections of food facilities as well as examining and testing both domestically produced and imported foods to look for contaminants. Basically, they were looking for contaminants in those products. Now, FSMA has provided additional tools to FDA to help protect food safety. For example, FSMA provided FDA with the legal authority to gain access to food safety records. These are all new actually under FSMA, thus enhancing the FDA's ability to determine whether a food may be hazardous or whether those responsible for the food are complying with the food safety requirements. In addition to the existing jurisdiction over the food itself, FDA has long had the authority to pursue enforcement action against food companies or individuals that violated the Act, the Food and Drug Act, and also, those companies violating the regulations. FDA has exercised its authority through traditional FDA activities. And as mentioned a few minutes ago, these activities focused on inspecting food facilities as well as testing foods. Now, food manufacturers, processors, or growers in other countries, they also must produce. If they want to export their products into the country, they must also produce food according to the local regulation, according to the US standards. Traditionally, FDA has enforced these standards through inspection of facilities and also collecting samples of human and animal food, both in the United States and those offered for import, which are analyzed in FDA laboratories to determine if they contain something that could be hazardous to consumers. So when a problem was found, FDA took appropriate action to ensure that consumers are protected from further exposure to these potentially hazardous food. Some facility inspection and testing of food products will be still appropriate under FSMA regulations. Therefore, FSMA provides robust and comprehensive tool to prevent food safety problems before they occur. In fact, the FSMA regulations are really proactive in nature, and rather than trying to identify and react to food safety hazards, FDA did a good job in the sense they have come up with these proactive regulations. Now let's see the 7 rules. These are the 7 rules of FSMA, or regulations they may call. Preventive controls for human food, preventive controls for animal food, produce safety rule, foreign supplier verification program. This is what we are going to see today. Number 5, accreditation of third-party certification bodies, sanitary transportation of human and animal food, mitigation strategies to protect food against intentional adulteration. You may ask the question, why was FSMA needed? FSMA was needed because food was causing too many illnesses that could be very easily prevented. And this statistics is coming from Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC. This agency has established that some 48 million people get sick annually, and about 128,000 of them get hospitalized, and 3,000 people die. And FDA believes that many illnesses caused by food, such as this, could be prevented if everyone in the global food chain was held accountable for performing their responsibilities. So it's not only the local food chain or food supply chain that is important, even the chain that is outside the country, because we import a lot of food products from other countries. Okay. While FDA has for decades overseen the safety of foods in the United States, the tools available to ensure that food was safe, they were limited actually, and FSMA really held them on time. FSMA was needed to provide FDA with the modern tools needed to be sure that everyone in the food chain is doing the things they need to do to ensure that food is safe to eat. Number 27, 2015. Actually, FDA published the final rule on foreign supplier verification program for the importers of food for humans and animals. This is called the FSVP rule. This requires importers to verify that their foreign suppliers are doing what is needed to comply with the U.S. food safety requirement. This is all discussed or documented in detail in 21 CFR Part 1, Subpart L. This is Foreign Supplier Verification Program for food importers. In passing FSMA, Food Safety Modernization Act, the Congress required that U.S. food importers have foreign supplier verification programs. Basically, it is for the importers to implement FSVP. And also, the Congress required the FDA to issue regulations spelling out the requirements of FSVP. That's exactly what FDA did. So the November 27, 2015 Federal Register publication contains both the final regulation and a lengthy preamble that addresses the issues raised by the comments. Obviously, when a regulation gets published, or even before that, the agency seeks public comments, and these are all documented in the preamble. So one of the major things FSMA does is define a new food safety rule for importers, which was not in existence before. A new role has been assigned to the food importers. In particular, U.S. importers of food now need to verify that their suppliers, that their foreign suppliers of human and animal food are meeting the obligations to produce food that meets the level of U.S. public health protection. There shouldn't be any difference between food produced locally and produced elsewhere that's coming into the country. Whereas FDA has always recognized that all parties engaged in the production and handling of food have the responsibility for ensuring or maintaining safety, that is product safety, the Foreign Supplier Verification Program rule now requires that importers covered by the rule must have in place a program to verify that their foreign suppliers are producing food in a manner that provides the same level of public health protection as the preventive controls. Basically, there are two preventive control rules or regulations, one for human food, the other one for animal food. And also they will have to make sure that the food is in compliance with produce safety rule also, which is nothing but fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables exported from other countries should comply with the regulations of produce safety rules. Importers also must ensure that the supplier's food, that is foreign supplier's food, is not adulterated under the Food, Drug and Cosmetics Act, nor misbranded with respect to allergen labeling for human food. Basically, I'm referring to sections 402 and 403 of the FTC Act. The number one principle of the Foreign Supplier Verification rule or regulation is that importers must now share the responsibility for ensuring the safety of imported food. This means the U.S. importer of food must verify that their foreign suppliers are meeting the same food safety requirements that U.S. suppliers of food are required to meet. That is in a nutshell. Now, the purpose of foreign supplier verification FSMA regulations or rules, FSVP is about minimizing the risk of U.S. consumers contracting a serious foodborne illness or encountering other safety problems from imported food. FSVP is intended to provide adequate assurance that, number one, food imported from other countries are produced or processed with the same level of public health protection as the FSMA preventive controls or produce safety requirement. And imported food is not adulterated under the FTC Act or misbranded as to allergen labeling, etc. This is applicable only to human food because there is no requirement for allergen control in the case of animal food. So the next question is, who is an importer? What is the definition of an importer? In the next 3 slides, I will define a few terms that are very important to understand the roles of importers, foreign facility, and also qualified individual in implementing the Foreign Supplier Verification Program, FSVP program. First, the definition of importer. The definition of an importer is specific to the FSVP regulation. This is given in 21 CFR 1.500. This is what I have mentioned here. It's nothing but the U.S. owner or the consignee. The definition of an importer as per FSVP is the U.S. owner or the consignee. But the terms U.S. owner or consignee are also defined in the rule as the person in the United States who at the time of U.S. entry either owns the food or has purchased the food or has agreed in writing to purchase the food. So the importer definition is any one of these three. The importer has to be identified at entry. When the food comes in, the FSVP importer is required to identify at the time of entry. Once the FSVP rule is in effect on the entry filing. Okay, so that is definitely a requirement. The definition also states that if there is no owner or consignee in the U.S., the foreign owner or consignee may designate a local agent, that is U.S. agent, or representative to carry out the FSVP responsibilities. So there is some flexibility in the regulation. And the rule requires that the U.S. agent or representative sign a statement of consent to serve as the FSVP importer. Okay? So if the owner or consignee did not have anybody local, they may appoint somebody, but the local person appointed has to give his or her consent in writing that they will act as the representative for the foreign supply. Okay. The rule does not require such a signed consent from the U.S. owner or consignee to serve as the FSVP importer. However, it is important that whoever is handling the U.S. customs entry filing understands that the person identified as the importer is the person FDA will see as responsible for complying with the FSVP regulation. I hope I have made it clear, because here I define who an importer is, and it is the U.S. owner or the consignee, and also if there is nobody like that in the country, then the producer of the food can also appoint somebody, but that has to be consented by the local representative, meaning they will act as a representative on behalf of the other company. So this is the definition of an importer. So what about foreign supplier? It's quite possible that the foreign supplier may not be the person or business from whom you directly receive product. It's not necessary always. But FDA defines the foreign supplier as the person or business that have the most to do with the safety of the product that's produced or manufactured. It's very clear now. The rule anticipates that there will be a connection between you as the importer and the foreign supplier, whether direct or indirect, whereby the FSVP importer can assess the safety of the food and the foreign supplier and verify that the foreign supplier's practices of producing a food as safe as food produced by a local manufacturer. So again, the definition of foreign supplier is very clear. It is somebody, person or business, from whom you directly receive the product or the products. The rule is written to incorporate sufficient flexibility to accommodate a variety of importing arrangements. I mean, it's always not black and white. There are a number of variations in the field. So in order to accommodate these importing arrangements, the rule has incorporated a lot of flexibility. But the basic concept is the FSVP importer can effectively assess and verify the safety of each imported food. The importer has got the responsibility to verify and confirm the safety of food they are importing. So in one of the slides I mentioned that there is something called qualified individual. This is somewhat similar to PCQI, Priority Control Qualified Individual for FSVP. PCQI is applicable to the animal food and human food regulations, whereas QI is applicable to foreign supplier verification program. Because the FSVP is based on determining the known or reasonably foreseeable hazard, again, some of you may be familiar with the descriptions, known or reasonably foreseeable hazard. Basically, the FSVP is based on determining the known or reasonably foreseeable hazard in the imported food and evaluating the risk or risks posed by the food and the foreign supplier's performance. Not only food, but also the performance of your foreign suppliers, their activities, and so all these must be conducted, all this must be assessed or evaluated by someone who has the knowledge and expertise to perform them properly. It's somewhat technical in nature because this person, qualified individual, is required to assess the known or reasonably foreseeable hazards in the imported food, whereas the PC rules mainly focused on the facilities actually, but here in FSVP we focus on food as well. Okay. For instance, you may use one person for conducting hazard analysis and another person to perform your verification activities. So it's a bit technical in the sense all importers are required to have someone described as qualified individual to carry out all these activities, known or reasonably foreseeable hazards in food they import. Under the new rule, a qualified individual is a person who has, I am just reading out the definition of a qualified individual. It's a person who has the education, training or experience necessary to perform an activity required by the FSVP rule. A qualified individual must also be able to read and understand any records that must be reviewed in performing the activity. Okay, again, they refer to 21 CFR 1.503 for this. The FSVP task to be accomplished determines what qualifications the qualified individual must have. Thus, the definition is simply stating that whoever is carrying out an FSVP activity should be someone qualified to do the job. So qualification is very important. Now let's see what, it may look a bit trivial, but I'm going to define what food is. This is coming directly from FDA, Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act. The term food means an articles used for food or drink for humans or animals, chewing gum. Then you have articles used for components of any such article, meaning ingredients used for manufacturing some of these products. Surprisingly, this includes products like dietary supplements, packaging and other food contact substances. So all these are defined as food under the FTC Act. Now let's get into part B, and here I'll be explaining the FSVP in greater detail. So what foods are exempted from foreign supplier verification program? FDA has established regulations to require that the system is applied to certain foods, whereas it was considered necessary. Okay, so the thing is, a few foods are regulated by other regulations, such as alcoholic beverages, or even food under FDA HACCP rules. I'm referring to HACCP rules for juice, which is under 21 CFR Part 120, or seafood which falls under 21 CFR Part 123, these are exempt from foreign supplier verification program. Why? Because they're already subject to preventive controls in the form of HACCP requirements. Okay, so these foods are exempted. Similarly, alcoholic beverages, and even the raw materials and ingredients used in the manufacture of these foods, such as juice, seafood, they need not comply with the FSVP rule or regulation. If you are importing any raw material, if you are producing juice products, and if you are importing materials, ingredients, additives for manufacturing juice products, then you don't have to comply with the FSVP regulation. Similarly, FSMA has also exempted alcoholic beverages because they fall under a different regulation. So that is also exempted. The rule applies to food that is, I'm referring to foods, FSVP, that applies only to food that is sold for sale or distribution to the public in the U.S. Some cases actually, small quantities of food that people might carry in their luggage, people coming from other countries, bringing small quantities of those food, they are also exempted from FSVP. That's obvious, okay? And there are some foods that are subject to USDA jurisdiction, such as meat, poultry, egg. So these are also exempted from FSVP rule. Okay? As a matter of fact, the USDA controlled or regulated food, they account for about 20% of the food consumed in the United States. Now we'll briefly talk about, I'm sorry, just give me a second. Now we'll briefly talk about the standard requirements of FSVP. First, hazard analysis. And you're all familiar with food hazard. A food hazard is something in the food that could cause illness or injury to humans or animals. And the first step in the foreign supplier verification program or process is to evaluate known or reasonably foreseeable hazard for that food that is getting imported to determine if the potential hazards in those food products, if they actually require a control or require controls. So importers are required to identify and evaluate, basically based on experience, data, scientific reports, and other information, the hazards for each type of food that is imported to determine if there are any hazards requiring a control. And please note that the hazard identified should be known or reasonably foreseeable hazard. This is different from regular hazard. Hazard, known or reasonably foreseeable hazard, these are different. The second one is also called potential hazard. Again, hazards can be biological, chemical, and physical, etc., etc. So we'll not spend time on all these things. The U.S. importer must use a qualified individual. So here is the thing. The U.S. importer must use a qualified individual to evaluate the hazard. That qualified individual may or may not be an employee of the importer. As an alternative, the importer can also rely on someone else has an analysis of the food, that is foreign supplier's food, including an analysis performed by the foreign supplier's qualified individual. So what it means is the importer can also depend on the qualified individual's evaluation, qualified individual in at the foreign supplier's site, but then the details, the documents should be reviewed by the qualified individual of the importer. Okay. Now, sorry, give me a second. I'm just going back to the previous slide. So the hazard analysis identifies known or reasonably foreseeable hazard, also assessing both the probability and seriousness of, or rather severity of the hazard. The first emphasis on considering the risk posed by the food itself and whether any hazard requires a control. So basically the qualified individual is required to identify the hazards under 3 different headings in the imported food and also come up with required controls. So evaluating foreign suppliers' performance, this is what this slide is about, means examining their procedures, processes, and practices related to food safety, looking into their compliance history with FDA and other food safety regulations, their own food safety history, etc., etc. So what it means, the qualified individual with the importer is required to perform an evaluation of foreign suppliers. It should be for each product from each country. Okay, looking into their compliance history, looking into their processes, practices related to food safety, their own product safety history, etc., etc. So in performing these evaluations, the importer must also consider the entity that will be significantly minimizing or preventing the hazards identified in the hazard analysis, okay, such as the foreign suppliers or the supplier's raw material or ingredient supplier, or perhaps a customer further down the line and located in the US. So these are some possibilities, okay. The qualified individual must consider not only the hazards, etc., etc., at the foreign supplier's site or premise. Even after that, there could be some introduction of hazards. The qualified individual is required to take into consideration all these things while assessing the performance of foreign suppliers. This also includes things like storage practices, transportation practices, their compliance history with the FDA, their food safety procedures, etc., etc. Okay. Now, once that is done, the importer has to approve, the importer must approve foreign suppliers. That is also a requirement of FSVP. Importers must approve their foreign suppliers. This must be done before importing the food. It's not after the food is imported. Approval of suppliers must be done before importing the food. The approval should be based on evaluation of the risk or risks posed by the food, that is hazard analysis findings, who is controlling the hazard, and also evaluation of foreign supplier performance, etc., etc. We saw some of these things in the previous slide. Importers also must have written procedures to ensure that only approved foreign suppliers are used to import food. This doesn't mean that you cannot import food from unapproved supplier. All this must be done by the QI of the, assessing the hazards, assessing the performance of suppliers, etc. Everything must be done by the QI, qualified individual. So going back to unapproved suppliers, it's quite possible that you may have to import products, food products from unapproved suppliers. Again, the regulation is somewhat flexible, but when you do that, you must subject the food to adequate verification activities before importation. That is very important. Um, so the rule provides importers with the flexibility to tailor supplier verification activities. Now we are talking about verification activities. Approved supplier, selection of suppliers, verification of supplier activities. That is the next requirement. Okay, so this is FDA has identified several acceptable types of verification activities. Again, this is one of the responsibilities of the QI, that they must verify the activities of your foreign supplier. Again, FDA is quite flexible on that. You have the flexibility to use one or more of the acceptable verification activities. So we are going to see the types of verification activities acceptable to FDA in the next slide. So what verification activities can you make use of? So these are some of the verification activities. You could do annual on-site audit, you could do sampling and testing, you could also verify supplier records. Again, when I say you, it is related, it refers to the qualified individual, and any other appropriate measures. Annual on-site auditing is the default approach when a food has a SACOTA hazard. So the acronym SACOTA stands for Serious Adverse Health Consequences, or death to humans or animals, actually. High-risk products where there is a definite chance of somebody getting into serious problems if those hazards are not controlled. In those cases, products of that nature, the default option is annual on-site audit. Okay, that is stipulated by the regulation. This slide talks about the verification activities again. That is conducting the verification activities. It is essential to ensure that the food you import is made using processes and procedures that provide the same level of public health protection. And FDA definitely allows you to perform the verification activities yourself or yourselves, or to rely on someone else to perform verification activities. But it is important that the persons conducting verification activities be qualified to conduct those activities. This implies if you are importing a product that has SACOTA significance, then you can do it yourself, or you can also make use of a technical expert, say for instance an auditor, qualified to do such audits, high-risk products. Then you could seek the help of those people also to verify the activities of your foreign suppliers. That's what it says. Now, once these things are done, there could be situations where corrective actions may be required. As a result of these verification activities, you may discover that the foreign supplier is not properly controlling the hazard. So then you have to come up with you have to raise corrective action requests as an importer. It is your responsibility to ensure that corrective actions are raised whenever you find deviations, actually, in their procedures, in their processes, etc., etc. And then all these must be documented. This is basically to ensure, to confirm that you have exercised due diligence and you have taken steps to protect consumers, such as preventing distribution of adulterated or contaminated food. Okay. Sometimes a simple corrective action may be sufficient, but depending on the situation, it may be necessary for you to evaluate your entire foreign supplier verification for that food and that foreign supply. This is what I just mentioned to you. As an importer, it is your responsibility to ensure that, number one, you have correctly identified the hazards associated with the food you are importing from a particular country, and you have taken due diligence to approve your suppliers, and you have taken efforts to verify the activities, food safety activities of your foreign suppliers. So now obviously the other important thing is record maintenance, and it covers a wide range of records, including corrective action record. There are a number of records that need to be maintained, and these records, these are general requirements. They must be complete in all respects. They must be kept for at least 2 years after generating the records, and these records are subject to FDA verification, actually. So you should make them available to FDA upon request. So far we have been going through the requirements of rather standard requirements. There is also another category of requirements called modified requirements. So for instance, if you are a very small importer, or if you import food from certain small foreign suppliers, or even if you import food from other countries with food safety systems recognized by FDA as comparable or equivalent, such as New Zealand and Canada, because FDA has determined that these two countries have food safety systems that are comparable to the FDA food safety system regulations. That's why, the full requirement may not be applicable, modified requirement may be applicable. Or if you import dietary supplements or dietary supplement components, ingredients for instance, then in those cases you don't have to meet all the requirements of FSVP, but there is something called modified requirement. Now what I'm going to do is, you may be interested in knowing about the applicability of FSVP, Foreign Supplier Verification. There are some 8 questions. I will quickly go through the questions, and that will tell you whether FSVP is applicable to you or not. First question is, are you an importer for FSVP purpose? That is, are you the U.S. owner or consignee of an article of food that's being offered for import into the country? If there is no U.S. owner, or again, this is what we saw in one of the slides. If your answer is yes, then let's continue to the next slide. But if your answer is no, FSVP is not applicable to you. If your answer is no to one of these two, then FSVP is not applicable. Let's assume it is applicable to you. Let's go to the next one. Are you importing any of these products? Fish, juice, food for research, alcohol, certain. Again, we saw that this previously. Okay, if you are importing any of these products, the list continues. These products are also included. Then, if your answer is yes, you know very well that FSVP is not applicable to you. Then let's go to the next slide. Do you import low-acid canned food in compliance with 21 CFR Part 130? There is a category of product called low-acid canned food. Okay, I mean that regulation controls only the microbiological hazards, but still, it is your responsibility as an importer whether there are any physical or chemical hazards. Otherwise, you will fall under the definition of adulteration, 402 of Section 402 of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. Okay, so Your answer is no. Let's continue to the next slide. This question is, again, are you a receiving facility implement preventive controls for food? Preventive control under this, you have established and implemented a risk-based supply chain program. The thing is, if the preventive controls for human food regulation is applicable to you, and if you have already done some of these things, for instance, if you have established and implemented the supply chain thing, if you have any supply chain based preventive controls, then foreign supplier verification program is not applicable. And if your answer is no to these questions, let's continue to the next one. The next one says, are you importing any dietary supplements? If your answer is yes, then you will go under modified requirement. If not, then let's continue to the next one. And then this talks about the turnover and things like that, averaging less than 1 million per year during the 3-year cycle, etc., etc. Similarly, for animal food, if your answer is yes, then I think you will go under the modified food safety, foreign supplier verification program. And if your answer is no, then you will continue to the next one. Do you import food from certain small suppliers or farms and things like that? Your answer is yes. You are subject to modified FSVP requirement. If not, we go to the next slide, which is, do you import food from a country that's officially recognized? I just mentioned to you that Canada and New Zealand, these are the two countries that have been recognized by FDA as equivalent to FDA standards. So then if your answer is yes, then you are subject to modified requirement. If not, then go to the next one. The last one is, it is full requirement, that is standard requirement, is applicable to you. So I only wanted to give you some basic introduction to foreign supplier verification program. And during the webinar, I defined the importer, define who an importer is, define foreign supplier, also define qualified individual. The qualified individual is really important in the sense importers are required to have someone called qualified individual to prepare the program to identify the hazards associated with the foods they are importing, and also come up with control measures, and also develop or define criteria for selection of those suppliers based on the performance evaluation. Performance evaluation is nothing but assessing the processes and procedures of your foreign supplier. And then you come up with, as an importer, you have to verify the activities of your supplier. So, and there are two types of requirements, standard requirement and modified requirement. So we went through a few things about standard requirements and modified requirements, where exactly modified requirements are applicable and where exactly full requirements or standard requirements are applicable. Now, this is just an introduction to the regulation, and if you want to know the details of the regulation, then I'm going to suggest you please attend one of the training sessions, of course free as I told you, that we conduct in Troy, Michigan. Thank you very much for your time, and if you have any questions, I'm here to answer your questions.